Hello everyone, this is Sivaranjani, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science from KCS Kasinadar College of Arts and Science. So today's topic is function. So what is a function? Before getting into a topic, we have to know about a program routine. So what is a program routine? A program routine is a named group of instruction that accomplishes some task. A routine may be invoked, that is called, as many times as needed in a given program. Here in Python, we have a thing similar called program routine. So that is function. So now we have going to see what is the definition for function. A function is a block of organized reusable code that performs a specific task. Functions helps break down complex program into smaller manageable pieces, making code easier to understand, maintain and reuse. So we have known what is function now. Now we are going to see how to define a function, how to frame a function. So for that we have seen a syntax and example for function. Okay, so first we are going to see what is syntax for function. The function always starts with a keyword called def and followed by the function name and the parameter. So we can give as many parameters we want. Down to that we have a statements that is needed to perform a particular task with the function, and every function will end with a statement called return if it is returning some value. So this is how we have to define a function. Here we have example for the function. As I have already told you, the function starts with the keyword def, and here the name of a function is average, so avg, and we have a parameters, and we have the statement that is associated with the function, and we are returning average here. So moving on to the next slide, as we have seen this example there already, now we are going to see what is def. So the function header starts with the keyword def that I have already told you, and the next thing, it is followed by a identifier called avg, which is the function name, that also you already know, and the function name is followed by the comma separated list of identifiers, that was n1, n2 and n3, that is also called as formal parameters or simply parameters, and the parameter is followed by a thing called colon. So this is how the function ends, and it has the number of items in a parameter list indicates the number of value that might be passed to the function. The values that be passed to the function is called actual arguments. So moving on to the next thing. So here we have a program that consists of a function that presided with the keyword def, and the function name was add numbers, and we have two parameters, that was a and b, and we are returning the sum of those parameters. And moving on to the program, we have a variable called result, and we are calling the function here. So the function name, as I have already told you, that was add numbers, and we are passing this arguments from here to that function. So the result was the sum of those two numbers. Here the AB were the formal parameters, and the 5 and 3 which was passed to the function was actual arguments. Now moving on to the next slide, we have a function called value returning function. So what is value returning function? A value returning function is a program routine that can be called for its return value. So as I have already told you, the value returning function should have a word called keyword associated with it. Now see, now going off to this program, we have a keyword of def, and our function name was add, and our formal parameters were a and b, and we are adding those values and we are returning those results to that program. Now we are getting on to the program with the variable sum of numbers. We are calling a function add, and we are passing the values, that was the actual arguments, and we are printing the numbers. So as it was a value returning function, we had a keyword called return. Now moving on to the next thing, that was non-value returning function. So what was non-value returning function? It doesn't return any value. A non-value returning function is a function called for its side effects and not for return a value function. Now here we can see we have the keyword called def, we had a function name greet, and we have a formal parameter also, but we are not returning any values here. So just we have a print statement here. Now we are having the function call here, we are just passing the argument called Alice there. So we are not returning any value, that's why we didn't use the return keyword here. So this was non-value returning function. And moving on to the next thing is called recursive function. So what is recursive? A recursive function is a function that calls itself within its own definition. So here we have a defined function called factorial. So as it is, it was started with a def keyword and the function name was factorial. We had a formal parameter n, and we are checking whether this particular value is not equal, that it whether the value is equal to 0. If it is equal to 0, we have to return a value of 1. Otherwise, we will be moving on to the next statement as it is a selection control. Moving to a next statement. Here, within this function definition itself, we had a function call again. So that is why it is called recursive function. Thank you.